Welcome back, everybody, to this next lesson in your journey. And today we're going to be talking about really what I believe to be the secret behind whether or not a physical products brand is successful or it is ultimately a failure. And when we look at it on the surface, I think it sounds a little bit airy-fairy. But when we break it down, it's actually just common capitalistic sense. And that is very simply that this business is not about products. It is about people. If you are absolutely clear on the people that are showing up to support your brand, you will have a much easier time than those who are going out just putting products out into the marketplace. Now, there are plenty of businesses that just create products and do just fantastic. They do a fine job. But to get profitability and scale faster and more predictably, I think that the hack, the secret, is to know exactly who it is that you are targeting rather than what it is that you are selling. I believe that the answer to almost every question in life is a matter of who, not what, not how, not even when, but who. If you know that, you will know the answer to just about everything. Who is the hack behind whether or not your business is going to be successful? I like to say that sometimes it is not you that's the problem. Sometimes it's not even your product that is the problem. It is just who you are targeting with that product. A glass of water to a person in a hotel is worth far less than a glass of water to the person in the middle of the desert. The same product given to two different people is worth a dramatic difference in value. That's the secret. If you do this right, you will be able to charge much higher prices, have much higher profit margins, and you'll have an easier time getting customers. Many of the people that I work with or that I advise come into this game because they're looking to make money. And so they have a product that they think is going to sell and they bring it to the world. And they talk about their product in a very vanilla way. They talk about the benefits of the product. They talk about the price of the product. They talk about how it's made. But the people who do really well understand the buyer behind the purchase, the person behind the purchase, and they're talking about the transformation that the customer will experience as a result of enjoying the product. One of the differences that I like to highlight is if we take a boring old spatula that's for sale on the internet. Most people will describe that spatula as saying, "We sell spatulas. They're really great. They look expensive, but they're not. We have lots of great reviews. Would you like to buy one?" That's how most people talk about it. They're talking about the product themselves. But if we switch it and we talk about the person behind the product, we can make this sound a lot more dramatic, a lot more impactful. If you were to simply say, "We believe that families are the cornerstone of society. We believe that families who take the time to eat together, even over a quick meal, are stronger. And we know that moms are the leaders of their families. We believe that you have the most important job in the world, and we exist to make it easier to do. We sell spatulas. They're really great. Would you like to buy one?" Same product. Which one do you want to buy? The difference is in the person versus the product. We know that moms buy spatulas. We know that moms believe certain things, or they at least need to be edified. We're speaking to a person. The product is almost secondary. I can almost guarantee you that if both of those spatulas were advertised, one would have a higher price point and more raving fans than the other, which would just sell product. Here's a clear way to understand this. Many of the people who get into this game invent or create or sell a product, and as soon as a competitor comes at them and has a cheaper price, they freak out. Why is that? It's because they don't have a clear difference to the product, and so they're afraid that the only reason why someone will buy from them is because of the price. I am here to tell you that the worst way to differentiate a product is on price. Price is the last thing that we think about. Price is the decision that we make when all other things are equal. Remember this, get this. Price is only a differentiating factor when everything else is exactly the same. But in what scenario are things exactly the same? Almost never. You know what is at the top of that? People and their pain. If you can identify a very clear person and you know what pain they are in, you can charge almost any price in order to solve it. This goes for everything. Very few people take fish oil because it tastes good or for the health benefits. Very few people worry about health or disease prevention. They think about solutions to existing problems. People take fish oil because of joint pain. People take fish oil because of a high triglyceride count. People take fish oil because they got some bad news. They take it for relief of pain, not pursuit of pleasure. Very few people work out because it's so enjoyable. They take it in order to avoid some sort of pain or because they don't want to take their shirt off and look the way they used to. We brought up the example in a previous lesson about the Honest Company, which sells eco-friendly household goods. They're selling relief of a problem. They're selling the avoidance of a problem, the problem of chemicals in your home, illness in the home. That's what they're selling. And who buys that? A very specific mindset. A mom with a very specific mindset. Now, if you look at the prices of the Honest Company diapers versus Pampers, everyone knows that Pampers do a, quote, better job. If you've ever changed an Honest Company diaper, well, it doesn't hold as much, we'll say. And they're about twice the price of their competitors. Why? Because they're speaking to a person and they're speaking about the relief of pain. This is the underlying work behind what determines if a brand is successful or not. Once again, I have referenced my buddy Aubrey, his company, several times throughout this training. He runs a company called Onnit. Onnit started off selling brain supplements, but it never would have evolved in the company that it is, which is a multi-million-dollar company. They never would have succeeded to the level that they reached had they not had a very clear person in mind. And the person that they had in mind, who was obsessed with total human optimization, was reflected in their advertising, reflected in their branding, reflected in their messaging, reflected in their targeting on the internet. Without knowing who that person is, it makes it very difficult to identify how to get customers, where they hang out, what the next product they would want to buy might be. And if you do know who that person is, you simply need to speak to that exact demographic. You see, so many people worry about viral videos, or they worry about price competitiveness. They worry about the things that are on the product level or that might get awareness, but they very rarely think about the passion behind the person who will make the purchase. An example I like to talk about is elections. Elections. The world was shocked in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected president, but He did the best job of polarizing a group of people. He knew who his target audience was. He knew what the message to that core audience would be. And they paid the price of waiting in line to vote at the polls. Politics is marketing. Physical products brands are marketing too. And your job as a physical products owner, a physical products brand owner, is to identify who the target market is, what they believe, and what types of products they buy. We can identify this by identifying what pain points they regularly have, what beliefs they have about themselves and the products that they purchase. And if you do that, you will have a much easier time making decisions from here. Decisions about where your target market hangs out, what language to use when you speak to them. You can even go out and start to build an audience of those people so that you can launch products. Remember the example that we discussed about my yoga business and how the way we launched that company was by building a very small following on the internet and releasing products to them. So on day one, when we went live with our product, we had people ready to give us their credit card to buy our products. Why? Because we knew exactly who the person was, and we worried about getting those people into one place so that we could launch products to them. Imagine if we had just worried about selling yoga mats. And we said, we got to sell more yoga mats. Got to sell more yoga mats. How do we sell more yoga mats? Let's drop the price. That's what most people will do. Your job is to get enough people into one place and to speak to them in the way that they are polarized, meaning they say, heck yeah, about your brand because you're speaking to them in a way that represents who they are. Now, in order to do that, you must know who your customer is not. If you know who your customer is, then you know who your customer is not. And you don't worry about those who are not your target market talking about you negatively or not buying your products. They're not your customer base and you don't care about them. You care about the ideal group of people that wants what you got, who would benefit by buying what you put into the world. That's your job. That's what a brand does. A brand does not exist to serve the world. The brand exists to help a small group of people take a meaningful step forward in their lives and really a step forward in their self-actualization, their self-identity. If nothing else, if your brand represents who your target market wants to be, you will be very successful. If you communicate to a target market in a way that reflects how they view themselves, they will buy from you forever. Now, all of this sounds nice. What do we do with this? Of course, we could go into deep sales psychology and we could go into the deep meaning that you hit when you speak to someone as they're pursuing self-actualization, but we don't need to do that right now. What we need to do right now is be very clear in our person, the person that we will serve, the person that we will target, for no other reason than by identifying people, identifying a core group of buyers. We'll be able to identify the products that we could sell to that target market. That will give you the clarity to move forward and to bring products into the marketplace. By the way, if you have a very clear target market and the ability to go get more of those people, that often makes you more attractive to a potential buyer. Here's why. Many times a company, a competitor, will want to go into a different target market. They'll want to serve a different race, a different age group, a different gender. They'll want to expand their product or their marketing line so that they are not just hitting the same old customers that they've been hitting for years, sometimes decades. The fastest way for them to do that is simply to go buy a business that already targets that demographic really, really well. So if you are targeting a specific demographic, a competitor who's targeting a similar but complementary target market might look at you and say, they've already got the targeting to millennials figured out. Let's just go buy them. They've got the messaging to women figured out. Let's go buy them. And they will buy you and your customer base, your fan base, your following, your branding, your messaging. They will buy that rather than trying to copy you. It's just faster for them to do that. So you will ultimately make more money sometimes by narrowing your target audience. In addition, when you narrow your target audience, when you're really, really clear on who it is that you're targeting, you end up bringing other people with you. Here's an example. When I was in college, it was the cool thing to do to wear a North Face jacket. The North Face is a brand that sells gear to winter athletes, oftentimes skiers. So winter outdoorsy people who ski or snowboard, they served that demographic. Where I lived in Indiana when I was going to college, and it was cold. And the cool kids who were on the winter sports team started wearing jackets by the North Face. Well, when the cool kids who are on the winter sports teams are wearing that brand of jacket, guess what happens? Everyone else starts buying the North Face jackets too, including myself. Now, the North Face appealed or targeted to athletes, but it wasn't just athletes who started buying the jackets. They were good jackets. It was good gear. So other people started to buy them too. When you isolate a very specific group of people, they tend to be your early adopters. They are the people who bring your products and your messaging to the rest of the world. Remember that political figure that I talked about earlier? He started with 10% of a raving fan base, and that was enough to tip the scales in a very busy election. If we looked at the other side of the aisle, if we looked at the Democrats in the 2016 election, there was one candidate who started as a fringe candidate. His name was Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders started with a very small group of raving fans. He ended up growing with a huge amount of momentum. When Hillary Clinton ultimately got the nomination, she didn't have the same core group of raving fans, and she ultimately lost. Marketing is about identifying your most passionate people and letting them spread your message. In order to do that, you must know exactly what the pain points of your audience is, who they are, and how to speak to them. Whether it is women who are moms, it is campers, it's Republicans or Democrats, it's Christians or Muslims, it's single dads, it's whoever would benefit the most from your product or service. If we eliminated prices from physical products, could you identify who would benefit the most from your product? If we can, that might be a nice guiding light for us to be able to identify the ideal market that we want to serve. We might be able to find out who our most passionate fans might be because they would have the greatest net benefit in buying our products. And if they hang out in packs like most people tend to do, then our branding, our messaging will spread like wildfire. Putting good products in front of hungry buyers is a really easy way to get rich. Putting products into the world and selling products is a very fast way to get frustrated. When you focus on the people, the product and the purchase becomes really easy. When we start with the product, we have to reverse engineer the whole person targeting, and that can be a really hard thing to undo. I know because I've been there. I've had products sell well without a clear target market, and when you don't have the target market, you're constantly questioning, where am I going to get my next sale? But if you know exactly who the person is, then we know exactly where we're going to go get those people. And so the purchases will naturally follow. So this leads us to ask a couple of questions, because our goal in this training is to know exactly who our target market is, what products we can release to them, and have those 3 to 5 products selling consistently so that we have $1 million brand. That's the purpose of this training. So let's ask a couple of questions. Number 1, do you have an idea of the person that you want to serve? Now, lots of times we've had ideas about a product that would sell, but who would be the person that would purchase that? Is it photographers? Is it campers? Is it yogis? Is it moms? Is it Christians? Is it Democrats? Who is it that would buy that? And how do they identify themselves? What group would they say they belong to? What activities, what organizations do they belong to? When we know that, then we get a pretty good idea of where that person hangs out, so we could ultimately target them when our product is ready to go live. So, who's the person that you want to serve? Do you know who that is? And if not, simply look at the ideas that are in your head and ask the question, who's the person that is behind this, and how would they identify themselves? If you don't know the answer to either of these questions, then this is something I want you to play with over the next few days. Start looking at the people you hang out with and ask the question, how do they identify? How would I box them in? What other people like them do they also hang out with? You might start noticing that people who go to the same church hang out together and they identify as Christian. Or you might identify that golfers tend to spend a lot of time together and they talk about golf together. You might notice that business people all share a common language, and people who are entrepreneurs tend to attract other entrepreneurs. People who are into low-carb dieting or eating for macros have a very similar language, and they hang out in forums together. You might start to notice that people with similar interests and similar languages hang out in packs. And I want you to start looking at the people around you and how they identify themselves, and if they express any pain points that they experience with the products that they purchase. Now, when you start to see ideas, when you start to see people, when you start to see a type of person, there's a second question that I want you to ask, and it's this. What products does that person already buy? Can you name 3 to 4 products that that person is already purchasing on a regular basis? Do you have a family member that is buying the same type of product over and over again? Do you have someone in an organization that you belong to or someone that you work with that is really into something and they buy a lot of them over and over again? Are they constantly trying different brands to see what resonates the most with them? Start to pay attention to that. What products, what 3 to 5 products does that person already buy? I gave you the yoga example. Somebody who does yoga has already bought a towel, a block, and a yoga mat. That's 3 products to a very specific person. Someone who is moving is probably going to buy new decorations, new art, new furniture. Maybe they're buying moving equipment, like those sliders that go under tables and dollies and stuff like that. Someone who's a camper, they're buying sleeping bags, they're buying lanterns, they're buying mosquito repellent, they're buying tents, they're buying RV hookups. Someone who's an RVer is buying a list of products. Someone who's a frequent traveler buys a set of products. Someone who's a CrossFitter buys a set of products. Someone who's a podcaster buys a set of products. You know, today I said to someone, here's a really interesting idea for a business. There should be a business that targets the people who go to Burning Man every year. Burning Man is a 70,000 person festival in the Nevada desert once a year. And everyone buys. They buy blackout masks, they buy earplugs, they buy biodegradable toiletries. They're buying baby wipes, and some of them are buying biodegradable baby wipes. They're buying all kinds of stuff. And 70,000 people are spending a few $100s a year in order to go to this festival. Well, that's a seasonal business if I've ever heard of one, but 70,000 people spending $100 a year, I could get behind that. I could get behind a $7 million a year business that served a very, very specific target market. You see where I'm going with this, don't you? As you start to think about people, the products that they buy start to show themselves. And so your job moving forward is going to be identify how you could approach this market, how you could identify these same people, but do it in a more intentional way and do it in a way that is different. Different is better than better. People pay attention to what is different. People pay attention to what is new. And there is nothing more different than a person and a group of people with similar beliefs and similar buying behaviors. Because if you can identify what's different about a person, you're striking them in their identity. You're striking them to what's most emotional to them. You're striking them to how they look at themselves. And if your brand is a reflection of how someone views themselves, they will buy from you, even if your products are inferior or if your prices are higher. And that is how you build million-dollar brands. Ooh, I'm getting all kinds of excited about this. Now, let me make this really, really easy and practical for you. If you are not sure about who your person is or what products that person would want to purchase, it's really easy for you to identify it within yourself. What products do you buy a lot of? What products do you shop different brands for? What 3 to 4 products do you buy regularly that are consistent with one another? I told you in our first lesson that one of my first brands was a sports nutrition company because I was into fitness and I buy a lot of health supplements. I'm always into the latest breakthrough, the new superfood. Well, guess what? I'm going to be paying attention to that. And if I'm paying attention to that because it's different, then there are thousands, maybe millions of other people who are different, just like me. That's how you start to identify a really clear target market. How do you identify, what group do you identify with, and how do you express that identity through what you purchase? Because what you purchase says something about yourself. What is that for you? Is it video games? Is it health? Is it food? Is it a specific diet? Is it an organization? Is it a belief? Is it a cause? Where do you spend your money and why do you spend it? For example, I have a dear friend who will pay twice as much money if something has less packaging because she identifies herself as someone who is not wasteful. Wow. Isn't that interesting? So if something like eco-friendliness or reducing waste is important to you, that's a differentiating factor. And just because it's less, that does not mean it's cheaper. It might actually mean that it's more expensive. The more specific and the more different you can be, the more of a raving fan base you will have, the more money you will be able to charge, the easier time you will have identifying who your core raving fan base might be. And that will make it easier, faster, and more predictable for you to be able to roll out those 3 to 4 products that ultimately help you build a successful business. I'm going to give you an assignment that I want you to perform before you go into the next lesson. Before you open up the next lesson, please do the following. Post on social media and pick a group, any group. Could be for those of you who do yoga. Hey, for my fellow churchgoers. Hey, for you entrepreneurs out there. For you Republicans. For any group that you pick, and it doesn't even need to be the one that you're going to ultimately target. This is just an exercise. Post on social media and say, to my friends who identify as blank, or question for you who blank. What brands do you follow? And what products do you buy on a regular basis? And why do you buy them? And just see what people post. You'll be shocked at the reason why people make the decisions that they make. You'll be shocked at why people choose the brands that they do. But it will give you a new perspective and new clarity on how your brand will succeed in the world. An alternative assignment for this is to browse forum sites or reddit.com and go into the groups that are specific to that same target market, that same demographic, and post it in there. Hey, gamers, what brands do you follow and what products do you buy? And how do you make the decisions on what to buy or who to buy from or who to trust? You'll be shocked at what people say, and it will give you clarity on the types of things for you to focus on as you identify the people behind the purchase of those products. Do that assignment before we go into the next lesson. It will really expose and bring about clarity for your next decisions forward as we build $1 million brand. All right, go do that assignment, and I'll see you in the next lesson.